Friday. Finally Friday. Woot woot indeed, Agrajag 123. Woot a woot. Get in that channel. Come say hi. Be part of our friendly conversation. Or will it be a friendly conversation? Just gonna have to wait a few seconds and we'll find out. Finally Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers VIP and Patreon members from around the world. If you enjoy this show and everything that we do at Major Spoilers, point your browser to patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Well, happy Friday to all of y'alls, wherever you may be. Well, for some of you, it may already be Saturday, in which case, please tell me the winning lottery numbers. So glad to have everyone here this week. Look at the room. Agrajag is here celebrating the Freitag. Frida's Day, right? Comes right after Thor's Day. Kevin 11 is in the room. Xantharis. Vince is in the room. Mark is in the room. Happy Friday to you, Mark. Partying, yeah. Oh, Friday. Oh, Friday. I know, I never really hated that song. How are you guys doing on this Friday? I know we're getting ready to go into a holiday week next week. So all sorts of disruptions across the board for everybody. It's probably why all the publishers just flooded me with emails in these last 2 days. So there's going to be a lot of updates that need to be done to the site tomorrow and throughout the weekend and into next week. And if you are in the United States, or if you're somewhere in the world where you celebrate the American Thanksgiving, maybe you're stationed overseas or you're traveling overseas during the holiday, I hope you have a nice and safe one. But yeah, so we've got that coming up next week. If you've got something good planned for the weekend, my youngest has got a karate test tomorrow, a belt test tomorrow. He's going to be doing that for like 3 hours, 4 hours almost, for his belt test. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the kid. The one, J. Michael T. says he's driving today so he can listen, but hey everyone, happy Friday. Black Friday approaches. I mean, what do you guys do on the weekend? I know something that I was able to do just before I sat down to do the show this week was I had a chance to watch part of episode 3 of The Mandalorian on the Disney Plus streaming service. Even dug out my own old original toy Yoda here with his original 3 toes and no toe on the back, just a heel, right? Oh, the little Mandalorian with the baby Yodas. Podcast you must. Very excited about that show. Very excited to see that on Disney Plus. And it had me sitting back and thinking, oh man, look at how far Disney has come. Look at how far Disney has come from a little short subject animated cartoon company in the 1920s to this juggernaut of today. But Disney was got me realizing that Disney was almost not the juggernaut. And certainly, even though the Mickey Mouse cartoons and the Merry Melodies and all these other things that were out there made Disney very popular, it was not a powerhouse. In fact, it was a studio without a home. And what do I mean by that? Well, you have to remember that in the early days of Hollywood, in the silent era of Hollywood, you had 5 studios that were basically in charge of everything. The Big Five is what they were called. We had MGM, which was Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, and RKO Pictures. These were the big five. And they were the ones that had the A-list celebrities. They were the ones that, basically had the studio system where you went to work for the studio system, and everything from the writers to the editors to the actors to all the grips and hands and directors and everybody was essentially owned by the studio. If you were an actor and you were under contract with RKO Pictures, you only did pictures for RKO. And so was it, I can't remember if it was Warner Brothers or MGM, used to have, Cavalcade of 1,000 Stars, these big names that would draw people in week after week after week. And so when we look at the golden age of the studio system, it's really, really fascinating to see how that machine was churning something to the effect of 104 films a year from Warner Brothers alone. They would have the A block of movies. These are the ones that the big headlining stars. Today we would equate that to the Maleficent movie, or this weekend it would be the Frozen movie, these big A movies that everyone wanted to see. And then they would also release sometimes one, maybe two, so you could have 140 plus films in a year from a studio. You had these B movies, and we call them B movies because they weren't great. They didn't have the stars. Usually, things like the Bowery Boys, the Little Rascals might fit into this. Short subject pieces would all go into this. These would be your B-list movies. But because you often feature things in a double bill, you could go and see a double feature on a day, or if you're a kid on the weekends, you could go and watch a whole block of films. You could go see, a newsreel and a cartoon and a B feature, and then stick around for the A feature and have like an afternoon worth of content. 4 hours worth of content. And the 5 studios were in control of that. Again, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, and RKO. Then you had the little 3 major studios. Because remember I said that if you were an actor with a studio, you could only work for that studio. And then there were some actors like Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford, and was it Errol Flynn? I forget. They got fed up with that studio system. They said, we don't want to work in these kinds of contracts. We're going to go and form our own studio. And so they formed United Artists. I forget what year that was, like early 1920s. This is all silent era stuff. You also had Columbia Pictures, and you had Universal Studios. Those were the 3, the little 3. So the big 5 and the little 3, 8 studios that kind of had control. Now, unfortunately, the little 3 didn't have a bunch of A-list celebrities beyond Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and I want to say Errol Flynn. Somebody can correct me on that. And they would be able to release movies, and they could even distribute movies. But one of the things that was going on in the 1920s and 30s was that some of these studios, in fact, every one of the studios in the Big Five, they also owned their own theaters. Paramount owned something like 1,200 theaters across the United States in the 1920s and 30s, which was about 17% of all of the screens. And so if every studio if those 5 had, let's say, 17%, 95%, somewhere around there, of all of the theaters across the country were owned by those movie studios, either completely outright or with partners, kind of like a franchise thing like you might see with McDonald's today. And so it was a guarantee that if you're a Paramount or if you're a Fox, in fact, here in Hays, Kansas, we have a Fox theater. It was not built I want to say it wasn't built until the late 1940s, but it would have been part of this Fox, chain. The problem is with this, and some of you know where I'm going, when you own the ability to make something, when you own the ability to distribute something, and when you own the ability to show something, and no one else can get into it, that's a monopoly. It's called vertical integration is what it is. And you can go and you can see that there are pros and cons to vertical integration. You know, I don't want to say Apple is vertically integrated, but you could kind of think of it this way. If you're building a PC, you can go and get parts and pieces from wherever you want. You can cobble together your own PC and you can run the operating system Windows 10. And maybe you get a faster processor, or maybe you get a faster graphics card. You can pull and park and build it yourself, however you want. Apple products are a little bit different, right? You buy the Apple product. You buy the operating system with that product. And you can't just easily go in and swap out a hard drive or swap out RAM, or you can't go in and swap out a graphics card. I mean, you can, but it breaks terms of service and stuff. But this is how the theater system, the movie system worked from the silent era up until 1945. And I know what you're thinking, Stephen, you started talking about Disney. Yeah, Disney, we haven't even gotten, we've talked about the big 8, no, the big 5 and the little 3. We haven't even talked about Poverty Row. The studios that were, I don't want to say poor, but they were, right? They were so poor that they didn't own any theaters. So you have Grand National, you have Republic Pictures, you had Monogram Pictures, and you have PRC. These were the ones that were releasing serials that would go into it. Many of you know the Republic Pictures. If you're a fan of The Watchmen, you know I'm not a Republic serial villain, Dan. I did it 45 minutes ago. That's the Republic Pictures. That's who's doing that. Rocketman on the, not Rocketman to the Moon, but, you know, those kind of Gene Autry little serialized things. In the non-major section, now all the way down at the bottom, that's where you find Disney. That's where you find Embassy Pictures. That's where you find Nordisk Films or Pathé out of France. And the British Lion Films, all those guys. Just trying to get their films shown wherever they could through their own methods of distribution. And the real problem was, what about that 5% of theaters? If all these theater chains own their own theater system, the Big Five especially, what about that 5% of the theaters, the true independents? How would they be able to show films? This is where the studios were so smart. They realized with their own theaters and with their franchise-owned theaters, they could do this as well as do this with their own, with the independent theaters. Something called block booking. And block booking works this way. Well, hello, little theater. It's your boss, Paramount Pictures. Yes, coming up in 2020, we have a slate of 52 films that we're going to send to you that you're going to have to buy outright. And you might be the theater owner going, oh, 52 films, this sounds great. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do them. What do you got? What kind of films are we going to get to see from you, Paramount Pictures, in 2020? Oh, you don't need to know what pictures we're going to send you. We're just going to make you pay, and you're never going to know what we are going to send you. But we are one of the big studios. You know it's going to be good. Oh, and you're the theater owner going, oh, okay. All right. So we still got the same kind of deal in place, right? I mean, we're going to share in some of this revenue. Oh, yes, of course. We will continue to have a revenue split with you. But, you know, you've got so many theaters and you have so many shows that you want to do and you want to fill the seats and we want to make sure that you do that. We've also going to make you buy our B block. Excuse me, what? What's the B block? All those B pictures, the second feature, the not so good movies. We're going to make you buy those as well. Because we're the big, bad Paramount Pictures. Or Warner Brothers or whoever. We're going to make you do this. Okay, so what are those B-list pictures? Well, you're not going to know that either. So what you're saying is, we're going to have to pay for things that we haven't seen up front, and we're going to have to show them, and we can't show films from anyone else or we're going to break a contract with you. That's right. Well, sounds great. Well, the theater owner might be saying, well, I can get a 50% share, or we can talk about revenue splits at another time with the theater system. But the B block was something that the studios got 100%. They were sold to the theater chains. So even a crappy B movie, and sometimes these theaters were forced to play 2 B movies a week, or every other week switch in a new B movie while the A movie was still running. The studios figured out that under this block booking system, that even a cheap, horrible movie like Surf Nazis Must Die could actually make a really, really big profit. That a movie like The Black Hole could make a really, really big profit under this block booking scheme. And the independents they were totally screwed. But here are 5 studios in the little 3. So Paramount is being the merciless, basically. And it's not just Paramount, right? It's MGM, and I'm saying Paramount because eventually the government said, whoa, wait a minute. You know what? There's this thing called the Sherman Antitrust Act. You may have heard of it. It came about in, the 1860s or 1870s, something like that. Hello, Paramount Pictures, this is the U.S. government. Oh, yes, what can I do for you, son? You need another contribution. Yes, sir. Have you heard of the Sherman Antitrust Act? The what? Antitrust Act? Never heard of it. But the thing was, because monopolies are illegal because of the Sherman Antitrust Act, in 1938, the United States went to sue Paramount and the Big Five, and the Little Three as well. But you will often see this case referred to as the United States of America versus Paramount et al., meaning all others, but Paramount was the lead one in this case. And they said, look, you guys can't do this. This is illegal. And so, there was some hemming and hawing in 1938. And they kind of reached an agreement where the studio said, okay, listen, government, we don't want your interference here. We'll take care of this. And so they kind of came to this agreement. It wasn't a settlement. It was this kind of limbo period of the court system. So the Big Five said that they could no longer block book short film subjects along with their feature films. So that B blocking kind of went away. But in this initial agreement, the Big Five could continue to block book feature films. But they could only do it 5 films at a time. So that means, hey, if you want this film with the big celebrity star of the day, you also have to take these 4 other films. You have to buy them in a package of 5 at a time. They had to also restrict the blind buying process, where the theaters were forced to just take whatever they were told to take and like it. And finally, there was supposed to be a creation of a board that would oversee this. By the time all this happened, it was towards the end of 1940, going into 1941, or I'm sorry, by the end of 1941, when all of this was finally kind of put into place. And then we go into 1942, and we all know what's going on around the world, and the government's kind of preoccupied with everything. Little thing called World War II. And so for a couple more years, the studios were still kind of essentially operating in this vertical integration monopoly. And so you still had this separation of the Big Five, the Little Three. RKO Pictures sold to Howard Hughes, I want to say in 1943, 44, 45, somewhere around there. And RKO Pictures, Howard Hughes knew that another lawsuit was coming. The big 48 or 45 lawsuit. Yeah, 1948. He knew this lawsuit was coming. And he said, you know what I'm going to do, would it make you happy because of this vertical integration system? Would it make you happy if me, RKO, one of the Big Five, what if we just sold all of our theaters and we just got rid of the theater portion of this process? And we just went about through distribution methods. We could still do this 5 at a time. We could do all these other things that I outlined. But if we divested ourselves of our movie theaters, would that satisfy the government and say that we're no longer a monopoly? We still want to control the making of the movies. We still want to control the distribution of the movies. But we don't have control over the theater. So there'll be a competition. Theater owners can now pick and choose what movies they want. And RKO was kind of like when you play Jenga and you pull out the wrong peg and the whole system falls apart. Because once RKO kind of crumbled, the court system and the U.S. government, Department of Justice, said, yeah, 1948, United States versus Paramount et al. Yeah, divest yourself of your theater chains, and everything will be good. In 1945, 1946, 1948, 1950, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible time for the movie studios. Because first of all, you had so many people out on the war, and this is one of the reasons why in the 1930s, when they tried to go to the movie theaters and try to do monopoly stuff, the studios convinced FDR that, man, we are in dire straits right now because of this Great Depression, and if you would just please let us continue to run our schemes the way we're running our schemes, then, all these people that work for the studios won't be out of work. And we can keep up the spirits and the morale of the American public during these tough times of the Great Depression. Go see a movie called The Last Tycoon, I think Amazon had a series on The Last Tycoon, which kind of covers this period. But by 1950, with the rise of television and the flight to the suburbs, the theater was in bad shape. And for this decision to come down, and you have to sell your theaters, and all of a sudden, B movies, which were pure profit, suddenly are a big pain in your butt. And so we start to see the movies go from 130 plus movies a year, in some cases, to less than 50 movies a year. So we start to see the studios dwindle. But we also see some of these other studios, like Disney, start to climb. Because now they have a foothold. Now they have competition. In a monopoly, you don't have competition. You control everything, the means of production and distribution. But now we have all these smaller studios that are able to start climbing up the ladder and making a name for themselves and making money for themselves and working the distribution method. For those of you that don't know, you have Walt Disney and Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm and Touchstone and all the rest that Disney owns. Those are movie studios. Disney does not distribute Marvel Studios films. Marvel Studios does not distribute Marvel Studios films. Disney's movie distribution branch is Buena Vista. So when you go and look at the Box Office Mojo and you're looking at the ranked movies and you see that, who's the distributor on this, you'll see it listed as Buena Vista Pictures. And, we could talk, one of the questions, unfortunately, because of the internet, Disney now has complete control of the movie and TV process. No, they've always had control of the movie and TV process. Distribution is a total different thing because there's still competition out there, right? You are totally free to pick if you want to be on the CBS streaming service or Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, which is also a Disney product, or Disney Plus, or the myriad of other online distributors. What we're talking about is the theater industry. So it's really hard to claim on the internet that you have a monopoly. You have to show, in this case, in a monopoly, and this was the problem with Windows, Microsoft, back in the day, when they were putting their browser as the default browser on PCs. There was this monopoly claim that was put out by whoever the competing one was, Chrome or Firefox or whatever it was. Netscape Navigator, yeah. That it was a monopoly. And so they had to prove that more than 51% of people using the internet were using whatever the browser was that Microsoft owned, because then that would show that they were doing monopolistic practices. Not a defined monopoly, but monopolistic practices. So with Disney right now with the internet, it's very hard to prove. Unless 51% of the world is using Disney Plus, it's very hard to prove that Disney is a monopoly, true monopoly in the way that things are set today. And this is where our story gets, let me find this really quick, gets a little weird. So things have been going good. We have studios rise, we have studios fall, we have studios getting sold, we have studios getting bought. And can you imagine going back to 1935 and going up to 20th Century Fox and saying, hey there, 20th Century Fox, someday in the future, in about 90 years, Walt Disney is going to own your studio. And of course, the big words, oh, that cartoon boy, he's never going to make it in Hollywood. We'll keep him out of all this. But look, 20th Century Fox, gone. MGM, gone. Warner Brothers, hanging in there. RKO Pictures, gone. RKO Pictures made the biggest mistake, and I'll talk about that another time. United Artists, gone. Columbia Pictures, owned by Sony. Universal Studios, hanging in there for now. So, here's the deal. We think that the Paramount et al. Case, the 1948 United States versus Paramount, essentially ended vertical integration in the studio system. And again, when we talk about vertical integration, we talk about the process of content creation, content distribution, and content exhibition, right? This is why when the 20th Century Fox purchase was made by Disney, that Disney had to divest itself of, was it Fox Sports or Fox News, and they had to get rid of a bunch of Fox Sports affiliate stations because otherwise they would have been pushing that majority ownership tipping into monopoly territory, Mr. Moneybags territory. But here's the thing. This is a thing that popped up on boingboing.net this week. Let me just copy this really quick if I can copy it. And I will paste it in here so you guys can kind of follow along. The Department of Justice, the people who went after Paramount and all the big five back in the 1940s, have plans to scrap the Paramount antitrust rule that prohibits movie studios from buying or strong-arming movie theaters. The DOJ, this is that I'm reading from Boing Boing, the DOJ is also set to get rid of the 1000 consent decree, including ones governing music licensing, giving far more power to ASCAP and BMI. I'm trying to find the exact same. A new regime could see mergers with America's already vastly over-concentrated movie theater industry, which has been sewn up by the Chinese-owned AMC and a handful of also-ran competitors. It could also see the return of block booking and other practices that led to the major studios tie up the movie screens, depriving smaller and independent producers of access to audiences. Now, can somebody, one of you really smart people, really fast, because I didn't have time to do this today, can one of you really, really smart people go up and look and see the last reported earnings for AMC? Because for the last couple of years, AMC has been pretty vocal about the studios not doing their job and making movies that put people in their seats. Yeah, we certainly get a few big movies like Avengers Endgame or the Spider-Man's Homecoming or that upcoming Star Wars thing. But so many of you other studios are just producing crap. We can't fill the theater seats. And my understanding is that AMC probably has some profit, but it's not a large profit margin. Somebody could look that up very soon for me. But if AMC is really losing money and really whining and complaining about the studio system, my bet is if the DOJ is sunsetting this case, if the DOJ is opening the doors for studios to start owning movie theaters again, then the tables are really going to turn. Where once Walt Disney was at the bottom of the heap, Walt Disney Studios, Walt Disney Pictures, Walt Disney Entertainment, I think we can put a timestamp on this. In the next 3 years 5 years is what I'd feel super comfortable in saying. But I'm going to bet within the next 3 to 5 years, we will see Disney buy AMC. So what is, somebody found this thing from Market Watch. Let's go and see what this is really quick. Well, this is the current earnings, up $8 is what it is, up 0.5%. Sales revenue in 2018, $5.46 billion. That's up $500 million from the year previous. So the last 2 years have been very good for AMC. Let me just pop this up really quick. I don't know if we'll be able to see it or not. There it is. This is from Market Watch. So their gross income, $1.29 billion, which is slow growth from 2017, but up a great deal from 2016. And this is the time period when the studios were really complaining. And then suddenly we see these gross incomes coming up. But here we go. Net income. Net income over the last couple of years, pretty good. The last 2 years have been really good. $856 million for the net income. But you see some very negative drops here in 2017. I'm still going to hold by it that in the next 3 to 5 years, Disney, which is really the only studio that could probably swing this right now, is going to be fully integrated again. And what's the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I've only got one theater in my town, and it's AMC. And yes, I will probably go see Frozen this weekend, and I will probably kick back and watch all 3 episodes of The Mandalorian again. I would like to see a Fox movie, which is also owned and distributed by Disney. But what about Paramount Pictures? What about Columbia? What about these other movie studios that are out there? Are we going to be able to see those if Disney buys AMC? Or if AMC is allowed to buy Dickinson? Well, they've already owned Dickinson. If they're already buying up these other movie theaters? What's going to happen to our ability to go out and see new, independent, smaller budgeted films? Midsommar was a big hit. And it's a small budgeted film. We could, in the next 3 to 5 years, find our choice limited. And we could, very easily in the next 3 to 5 years, end up with a phone call from my local theater saying, hello, Big Overlord Movie Studio. We are thinking of booking movies for 2025. Can you tell us what we have and what we can choose from? We are the big studio. You're going to take what we give you and you're going to like it. But our audiences may not like. They're going to like it. Good day, sir. And I think I want to say good day to you right there. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you found that disturbing. Hopefully you found that chilling. Hopefully, and it's something that I try to get across to my students time and time again, if you don't study history, you are going to be doomed to repeat history. And things that we once thought were set in stone, vertical integration gone forever, is back. And it's happening before our eyes, or it could be back and happening before our eyes. And if this is something that concerns you, when you hear about these potential sales, when you hear that a movie chain is up for sale, if you hear about companies that are tightly aligned with one another being purchased by one or the other, be aware that that limits your choice. Be aware that the government sitting back and letting certain rules and regulations sunset away and I guarantee you that the reason why AMC is, I'm not saying that they are going to sell. It's my opinion, my guess, my prognostication into the future, is that we're going to get a phone call to the president. Oh, we poor studios, we're in a tough time. Please let us vertically integrate so that we can survive and keep these hundreds and thousands of people employed. And the U.S. government will nod their head and say, yeah, sounds like a good deal. Again, hopefully you found that interesting. I know it's not the comic book talk that you normally come to this channel to get. It's pop culture related. It's business related. It's historically related to things that you are engaging with and interacting with right now today. And I know everyone's excited that 20th Century Fox is owned by Disney, because now we can finally get the main Star Wars movie into the main lineup of all the other movies that are Lucasfilm owned. We can now bring back the classic sounds that we remember. Now we can have our X-Men's and we can have our Avengers all together on the big screen. But man, what are we willing to give up to allow that to happen? You guys have a great weekend. Next Friday, I'm planning to do both a Suddenly Thursday or a From a Car. Won't probably be From a Car. I'm going to try to do a From a Car next week, as well as a Finally Friday next week. But we'll see how things go as the holiday goes. I was going to split this conversation up into 2 parts, but I thought it would be really weird to have a part 1 and then either have a part 2 that doesn't look as quality as this, or part 2 comes 2 weeks later, so I kind of crammed it all into one. But hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you found it interesting. I hope that everybody who is hanging out in the chat is still hanging out and still having fun. I want to thank Mark Smith and Malone Hasco and Agrajag123 and Short House. And who else is in here? We've got the J. Michael T's, and we've got the Kevin 11s, and we've got Pleasant Doom and Balooey in the chat today. Thank everyone, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Oh, there's Crimson Neon. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing the chart there. So many awesome people. I hope that you come back the next time when it's finally Friday. Do good, be good. We love you. Don't forget, patreon.com/major spoilers. I know Kevin 11 has been great in posting that information, but please, the future of Major Spoilers, as you know, you've got the big 5, you got your little 3, you got your unaligned little small studios. We are way down there at the bottom, even below Poverty Row. Major Spoilers Entertainment LLC. We could use your help. We could use your help a lot in 2020. Patreon.com/major spoilers. $5 a month if you can afford it. If you can't, I totally understand. But if you can, you'll keep shows like this going. You'll make keep a lot of joy and entertainment coming to people's lives around the world. And it'll all be because of you. Take care. We love you. We will see you soon. Here's a bunch of really cool people right here in our credits section.